Welcome to the JJ Virgin Lifestyle Show with celebrity nutrition expert, fitness Hall of Famer, and four-time New York Times bestselling author, JJ Virgin. JJ is a warrior mom whose knowledge and expertise have helped change hundreds of thousands of lives with over 3.5 million podcast downloads and appearances on Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, The Today Show, Rachel Ray, Larry King Live.
Whoa. This show is about you, not about me. I want to help you find practical, real-world ways to dial in your health and mindset so you can finally lose that weight and feel strong and energized. Stop settling for less than your personal best. It's time to find out how to look and feel better than ever. And I'll be right here with you the whole way.
We have a celebrity on with us today who has made the transition. She's still out there doing TV, but has made the transition to being a health advocate because of her own health journey. Samantha Harris, who is on 8 seasons as the co-host of Dancing with the Stars. I had to ask her a little bit about that because, who doesn't love that show? And also was one of the hosts of Entertainment Tonight and Extra and E! News and NBC's primetime show Stars Earn Stripes. And 4 Emmy Award nominations and a win. She's like a amazing entertainment journalist and TV host. And she also starred in Broadway in the musical Chicago. I mean, oh my gosh, all these things. But what's brought her on the show today was her own personal journey. She was always a health and wellness enthusiast. And she's also a personal trainer. She wrote a book, Your Healthiest Healthy. And the reason she wrote the book was to tell her story with breast cancer, which we're going to talk about today because just even how it came to be discovered is so key here. So Samantha Harris, again, she's the author of Your Healthiest Healthy, 8 Easy Ways to Take Control, Help Prevent and Fight Cancer, and Live a Longer, Cleaner, Happier Life. She is giving a great resource for everyone, a list of the different things that you want to be super careful to not put on your skin. One of the things she talks about here is because she didn't really have the genetics for this. It's like, where did it come from? Possibly one of the places it came from were all those years of slathering on all of those chemicals before she would go on TV. So she'll be sharing that list at jjvirgin.com/Samantha Harris. I also want to share this awesome review from Gabby Scotty. And she left this review on iTunes. It says, love JJ and her 10 stars podcast. 5-star review says, I wish I could rate this podcast with 10 stars instead of 5. Well, I wish you could too, Gabby, but I'll take it. She says, JJ Virgin's expertise, knowledge, and straight to the point approach makes me look forward every week to her next show, which I know for sure will not disappoint. I'm still patiently awaiting to read her book, The Sugar Impact Diet. However, I'm number 40 on my public library wait list. Okay, Gabby Scotty, when you hear this, I want you to email support@jjvirgin.com and say, JJ said to send me the Sugar Impact Diet. And I'm going to send you that book and the cookbook too. How's that? Anyway, she says, this shows how much interest there is on our research and point of views on positive and active lifestyles, nutrition, and health in general. Thanks, JJ, for sharing all of your knowledge. I love that. And hopefully you hear this and will reach out to us so we can give you that book. And then when you're done with it, share it. Samantha Harris, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you on.
Thank you, JJ. Me too.
You have a wild story as to how you've kind of gotten into this journey of health. So I think that's the best place to start because, people who know you as a celebrity. So let's go from how you were there to how you got to here.
Absolutely. I think, people were used to seeing me in my ball gowns on Dancing with the Stars for the 8 seasons I was on there, or Entertainment Tonight, and always on a lot of health and fitness magazines, the picture of health. And I, at 40, thought I was as fit and healthy as I'd ever been. And then I was blindsided by a breast cancer diagnosis. And that's really where this journey began, because I thought I knew what health was, and I didn't.
So first off, let's backtrack. How much fun was it to be on Dancing with the Stars, and how much work? Like, really?
Equally a combination of a lot of fun and a lot of work. But more, I would say, For that show, it really leaned on the fun, especially because I grew up in a family of entertainers and performers who always loved the theater and the theatrics of performance. And my mom was in a dance company when I was growing up. So to be able to watch, I mean, I was probably the biggest fangirl of the show I was actually on, because
that's so cool.
I mean, every rehearsal we had, I would just be like giddy in the corner watching the dance, or watching the big, celebrity singer come on and perform their, latest single. So I love that, and being able to expose my eldest daughter, who's now 11, but when she was born when I was doing the show, I was pregnant with her on the show, and then for the first couple of years of her life, she would come to the set, and it was really fun to be able to share that just through her eyes, to see her eyes widen. And Entertainment Tonight was an amazing place to work. I interned there when I was a student at Northwestern University. So that full circle moment to be sitting in Mary Hart's chair was pretty amazing for many, many years.
Yeah, crazy. Then you get this breast cancer diagnosis. First of all, how did you find out that you had it?
Well, and I think that's truly what makes this story the craziest. So JJ, I was about to turn 40, and I thought, I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old at home. Let's set a baseline mammogram, because I know I'm so fit and healthy. And I got the mammogram, and the results came back clear, which is what I anticipated. But 11 days later, I was changing clothes after a workout, and I found a lump. And I thought that was really odd. And I wasn't concerned it was cancer, but I thought, let's just check it out. So I went to see my longtime OBGYN, who said it was nothing, sent me on my way. A month later, it was still there. Went to see my internist, told me the same thing. If you're worried about it, we'll keep an eye on it, but it's nothing. And that nagging of my inner voice just kept haunting me and saying, well, how do they know from feeling it in a clinical exam that it's really nothing? If I'm going to live with this lump, and it was sizey, let's make sure we're going to the experts who look at breasts every day. And that's when I finally scheduled an appointment with a surgical oncologist. But I'll tell you, even she didn't think it was cancer. So that appointment was interesting.
So she didn't think it was cancer, but she hadn't done a biopsy. She just based on what she felt.
No, that's what's so she saw it. She saw it on an ultrasound at this appointment, and said, "Yeah, you're not crazy. There is something there, but it doesn't look like cancer. But let's just biopsy it to be safe." So I had a needle biopsy. That came back, and she walked into the room with the results and said, well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is it's not cancer, but the bad news is I don't know what it is. So, let's just take it out. Now, I'd never had a surgery in my life, but I thought, okay, fine. Look, my boobs did what they needed to do. They got me my husband, and they fed my kids. So, all right, just take them. I don't want to have to worry about this, or take this lump out. So not both of them yet.
But this lump hadn't shown up on a mastectomy. I mean, not a mastectomy, a mammogram. You had a mammogram. It didn't show up, and you felt it 11 days later.
Correct. So,
which is crazy in itself.
Yes, and it didn't. Right? It didn't materialize. Or what we
it didn't come out in 11 days. So
probably years, slow growth.
Which is why I'm going to put a resource, and I'm going to actually connect you with this amazing woman, Dr. Veronique, who has this product called My Breast Friend, and it teaches women how to feel for lumps. Because I've got another girlfriend, Ingrid Macher, same thing. She found it herself. So I'm just doing a big, I am doing the big commercial right now for breast self-exam. All right. So there you are. Now she's going to take it out. Now tell us what happens next.
What happens next is she goes in. I wake up from the surgery, from the lumpectomy. She says, again, not cancer, because they do the down and dirty, rough, frozen sections in the room. I go home. A week later, it's time to go get my final pathology results, have her check the incision, make sure that it's healing properly. I tell my husband, don't bother coming with me. We know it's not cancer. Gorgeous day outside. Go play golf. So there I sat alone in a surgeon's office, finding out that, in fact, not only was the lump cancerous, but this little section on the perimeter that she thought, on the margin, she thought was healthy tissue. She wanted to just, for whatever reason, the surgeon said, in my gut, I felt like it was healthy tissue, but I just still needed to take a sample of it. And that sample, quote, healthy tissue, ended up being invasive cancer.
Whoa.
Had she not taken that, we would have thought, okay, ductal carcinoma in situ, the cancer cells aren't smart enough to get out of the duct. We take the lumpectomy, we're good. No further surgery, no further treatment needed. And because, thank goodness, this surgeon listened to her gut, She took that sample. It was invasive. That led to, of course, the road down to what eventually was my double mastectomy with reconstruction.
Wow.
It was a really nutty road. And a lot of people come to me. I'm a national ambassador for Susan G. Komen. And I'm very grateful to Komen because when I was, had my head swimming with thousands of questions, you kind of go through what you call kind of cancer university, right? You don't know anything about it before the diagnosis, and then you have to figure out a lot. And there are so many resources online that are not great resources. If you Google breast cancer, you're going to go down a path that is dark and scary. And every cancer is unique and different. So by going to Komen.org, I was able to find out some really useful information with amazing tools. And so I'm honored now, 5 years almost later, to be able to work so closely with them to see the work that they do. Communities, for outreach, for research, for legislation. So it's pretty phenomenal.
Good. And I think we got to take the fear out of all of this, because I know for friends who've got diagnosed, it's all of a sudden, okay, you have to do something tomorrow. It's like, breathe, hold on, get the information. Okay. So then you had the double mastectomy. And so what's happened? How's your life change? What has that done in terms of, because you were already a healthy person. What has this done now in terms of how you see your health, how you take care of yourself, et cetera?
Well, it's been honestly a gift in many ways, not just for me, but for my family, because of the changes I've been able to make. They're not just for me, they're also impacting my family in a wonderful, healthful way. So I had no hereditary link to my diagnosis. And my dad died of colon cancer. So I thought perhaps, and his mother had breast cancer. So I thought, well, this makes sense. It must be hereditary. And I did genetic testing far beyond the BRCA testing. And I had no genetic link. And it turns out actually only 5 to 10% of breast cancers are genetic. So then the journalist in me said, well, I need to search for answers. What the heck is going on? Why are 1 in 8 women diagnosed with invasive breast cancer over the course of her lifetime? Why is this happening younger and younger? And not just cancer, but other chronic diseases, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and autoimmune disorders that I feel like are plaguing our society in more ways than they ever have. And I looked to my grandmother's, one who lived, the breast cancer survivor, lived to 95. My other grandmother was still living at 94. And I think, well, the genes are there for me to have a long life. Why are things changing? And it's changing because of what's in, on, and around our body. And that's what I determined from all the research and speaking to so many experts that I did. And so how could I change how I'm eating, my approach to exercise? How can I change the products I'm using on my body, in my home, cleaning supplies? And then there's a whole other component, which I know you and your wonderful, beautiful listeners know very well, which is the mind component, the toxic relationships that are adding stress to your life and detracting from you, that are really, really wreaking havoc in your inner self. And then finding positivity in your life. How do you turn things? I was in these dark days, curling up in my bed, just devastated in many ways. And then I vowed not to be devastated by a cancer diagnosis. What could I do to take control? And positivity was the biggest help through my journey, and flipping the script so that everything that hit me next through my cancer journey was taken with a positive spin. So, okay, yes, here I sat with the cancer diagnosis. Well, what's positive in this? Well, we caught it early. And so I started this sort of positive self-talk that really helped. Okay, well, what's next? Keep listening to yourself. Okay, well, I am fit and healthy otherwise. So that's going to lessen the chances of complications in surgery. It's going to help with a faster recovery. So that sort of positive spin has now taken me in a new direction and led me to write a book called Your Healthiest Healthy, which was a comprehensive action plan that didn't exist. And so that's why I went to search for all these answers and was thrilled to be able to find them, and then honored to be able to share them with others.
And we will put that in there because I think it's so key. I think, I have a lot of listeners because I went through a very, very scary situation where I almost lost my son. And so much of us being able to help him, come back to life, he was basically dead, was through mindset. But it is challenging when you're in the middle of like this scariest situations to go, okay, what's good about this? It's like, it's not necessarily where your mind goes the first time unless you really work on it and train it. But I love what I'm hearing because you can. And the best thing about all the positive thinking and mindset is it's actually available to everybody and free. Right? I mean, we're not saying, hey, now you're going to have to buy this specific thing and take this. Nope. This is all stuff that's at all of our fingertips. And I'm not going to say it's easy. I know when I tell people, like, you know, I got called and said, hey, you're going to have to let your son die. I wasn't sitting there going, what's great here? You know, I was like, oh my gosh. But the thing that was able to pull us through, and it is in life with everybody, it really comes down to how you show up when things are challenging, because it's easy to show up strong when things are easy. It's when you're challenged that really makes the difference. So that's in your book. Now, what about beyond mindset? What are some of the things that you put into your life on a daily basis to keep you healthy?
Well, in terms of food, some of the biggest switches that I made were really leaning into a plant-based whole foods diet, which means what that looks like. So I was someone who I was focused, especially with all my workouts, I was focused on getting as much protein as possible into every meal. That meant a lot of animal products. And when I flipped my plate so that at least half my plate at every meal is filled with veggies, ideally fresh, but at dinner it's usually roasted or baked or sauteed. My morning smoothie, which I used to first I started with cereal, then I moved to Greek yogurt, then organic Greek yogurt. It was definitely a process. And that's something that in Your Healthiest Healthy, it's all about small, manageable steps, because none of this can be done with success overnight. And it can be incredibly overwhelming when you realize all the different areas of your life that can use some improvement or tremendous improvement. But it has to be done in an accessible way. So one of the things I did, like I said, so I started slowly, but eventually I got to having smoothies with kale and spinach and, different protein powders and matcha green tea powder and bee pollen and chia seeds and flax seeds.
And I think this is so important. This did not happen overnight. You didn't wake up one day and go, all these things are coming in. You started adding and adding. And I also love that you're talking about the things you've added into your diet. Because I think for so much of us, we go, okay, now we have to take all these things out. It's like, well, what could you add?
Right. And that when you're even just talking about mind, that also applies to this, where that mentality of what you just said, what can't I eat? No, think about all that you can eat. And I eat, when I tell you, if I showed you the size of the salad, and I think people are probably rolling their eyes going, oh, salad. But I eat this vat of fresh chopped salad virtually every day, especially when I'm working from home, or if I'm on the set, I take it to go, with lentils and broccoli sprouts if I can grab them from the farmer's market, garbanzo beans, avocado for some healthy fat. And you can eat huge amounts, not gain weight if people are worried about that, because I know we're always concerned about that. But also has given me more energy than I've ever had. And I was always known as the Energizer Bunny. So that's a pretty big statement.
And I've got to do a shout out because I heard you say them. Broccoli sprouts. If you're going to think of one thing today that you're listening to going, all right, I want to do one thing, what would it be that you're adding to your diet, especially for breast cancer risk reduction? I just had a close girlfriend go through breast cancer, and there were two things I had her do. I was like, listen, just do these two things for me, please. And it was broccoli sprouts every day and annatto tocotrienols, which it's really exciting what's happening with annatto tocotrienols and showing that people who are going through, say, chemo, are increasing their survival rates, et cetera. So some really great research on that too. So we'll put that in the show notes too, but love the broccoli sprouts. That's fabulous and awesome.
It's about I think we focus so much as a society on macronutrients. What can we read on the package? What are the calories? What's the fat? Maybe what are some of the vitamins that are in there? What's our sodium level? What's the cholesterol? No, but it's the micronutrients, the things that aren't on the label, which is where broccoli sprouts are such a powerhouse. It is such an important thing. So, and that same thing with the flax seeds and the chia seeds and all of the things that you can integrate into your diet without really tasting much of a difference. Although I really like a lot of broccoli sprouts on my avocado toast, I'm just saying. I
actually take it as a supplement because I'm like, oh, but there are options I'm one of those super tasters. Anything that's remotely bitter. I'm like, if coffee sits in a pot for more than like a couple minutes, I mean, I'm one of those ones. One of those crazy ones. But the key takeaway on that is you find a way. Now, you have one other thing in your book, and we'll put your book in the show notes too. And you talk about negative Nellies. And I think this is such a key thing we don't talk about enough as we talk about detoxifying, your air and your water and your food. But that's not the only thing we need to detoxify. Let's talk about what these negative Nellies are.
Well, negative Nellies zap your positivity. They add anxiety to your life. And we all have them in our lives. And sometimes I don't think, unless we sit back and take notice, we sometimes miss that. But it's the girlfriend who never comes to your side of town for plans or doesn't call you back in a timely fashion ever. Or the mom at school, you're not really friends, but you happen to always stop and chat for a little bit. And every time you leave the conversation, for whatever reason, your shoulders are at your ears. And it's those types of relationships, the one-upper, we all know those women, and sometimes men, and sometimes family members. And that's where it gets sticky. It's easier to break up with a friend, harder, of course, to put boundaries on a family member, but there are ways to do that. And so in the book, I talk about basically one of the things I'm really proud about in the book is scripted dialogue. And I have this not only for how to have that conversation with a friend who might be potentially toxic to you, but also how to talk to your kids broken down by the ages about a diagnosis or a health crisis. And also how to have positive self-talk. So those are all three really key elements in terms of that. But one thing, JJ, that you mentioned and asked me a little bit before is, besides nutrition, what were some of the big changes? So the nutrition was a huge change, but the other thing, and so for a woman who has spent her career in the hair and makeup chair day in and day out, being slathered and shellacked and sprayed to high heaven, this was eye-opening, which is the toxins that are lurking in our beauty products. Our cleaning supplies as well. But the beauty products is really what got me, and our feminine care. So I detail all of it, and with ways of what to look out for, what ingredients, to becoming familiar, whether it's the food you're eating or the products you're using on your body or in your home, how to become familiar with the ingredients list so that if there's anything on there that's a red flag, you say, you know what, I'm putting it back on the shelf. Let me get something else over here. But there are also great resources for those. This is so key.
I know you're giving this to everybody for free too, which I super appreciate, because you got to realize, everybody, your skin is a sieve. If you're putting it on, you should not put something on your body that you wouldn't eat. So, and if you're putting it on your body, it's going in. So your skin is a sieve. So I know at jjvirgin.com, we'll put it at jjvirgin.com/Samantha Harris. You're going to get the download of the things that and I think you're putting things you do not want to put on your body. What else is in that download?
And then also in that download, so that's the keep off your bod list. So key ingredients, and not just the list of the name, but also what it is, what it does, why people use it in a product, and then why it's harmful. Something that your listeners might not know. The European Union bans more than 1,300 chemical substances as either carcinogenic, toxic, or possibly harmful. The United States only bans 11. And our safety care guides that are put out by our legislators haven't been updated since the early 1900s. And there is a bill that's been stuck in Congress, I think, since 2015, that Senator Dianne Feinstein and a few other senators have been trying to update. But it's, unfortunately, the big corporations, they just have a lot of money-hungry grubbing, and they are, their lobbyists are there, and they are just getting things stuck. So we as consumers have to take control.
Well, here's a great example of that makes me nuts. I've got some buddies that have a company called Dry Farm Wines that we are big fans of here on the show. And I did an interview with Todd White, one of the founders. In the US, there are 87 different additives that you do not have to put on the label in your wine that can just be in there. Not in Europe, just here. So these are things we need to know about, because it's just ridiculous. You think everything is fine. And then there's also meaningless statements on labels like natural.
Right.
Right? I mean, natural is not organic. It's not the same thing. So you'll want to grab this list. It's jjvirgin.com/Samantha Harris. These things really matter. We want to look at a couple different things in terms of toxicity. I mean, when you look at cancer, and people are doing now genetic testing, but the rise in cancer doesn't make sense. It's not a genetic issue. if it was, we wouldn't have the rise we have. There's clearly other things at play. Clearly, toxicity is a massive issue here. And the first thing you want to do is avoid exposure wherever possible. And then, of course, do things like the broccoli sprouts, like right diet, all the things that we do on a regular basis. We've talked on a lot of the different podcasts about this, on how you can detoxify regularly. So the first step is to get this list so that you are not letting these things get on you. And we'll also put at that same link, we'll put it in Samantha's book and all of her social media handles so you can communicate with her as well. And again, that's jjvirgin.com/Samantha Harris. And Samantha, it has been awesome having you on the show. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Before we go, JJ, something I do want to offer to your listeners so that they know. So the book, Your Healthiest Healthy, came out a matter of months ago, but I just launched the Your Healthiest Healthy retreats that are also all the information, especially on my Instagram. But it's something, sometimes people just need a little bit more of a help and a leg up to get started. And what the retreats offer are not just, I'm going to arm people with the tools necessary to live their healthiest life, empower you as a consumer, as a parent, as a health-seeking person. And it's women only, so it's a lot of really good, intimate crowd. And I'm also certified as a fitness trainer, and so I'll be leading a couple of great classes on a hike, and it'll be a really special opportunity. So we'll be continually updating the retreats and where they are, always at a high-end resort and spa, so you get a little pampering. That's always we need this.
We like that. We always like the pampering.
We're on the bottom of the to-do list. We need to put ourselves at the top, so we can take care of those who need us to take care of them the most.
Absolutely. We did a really fun one a couple months ago. We had a big warrior mom contest, and the woman had gone through cancer and come out and had been incredible with her kids all throughout it. And then we took her to Rancho Valencia to the spa. It was awesome. So I'm big on the spas. More spas. All right. Well, I thank you so much. Super appreciate your time. Now, after the break, I'll be answering a listener's question. So stay with me. Welcome back. This is the time where I answer a listener's question. And I actually am going to bring this up because it came up on the show. Samantha was talking about how she moved to a more plant-based diet with the diagnosis of cancer. And it comes up all the time on my Facebook and Instagrams. Again, if you haven't jumped on over and joined me live, I do go live a lot on Instagram at jj.virgin and Facebook at jjvirginofficial. I try to do a simulcast because it's great for my ADD and I get to talk to more people. So I get asked all the time, and I think it's because I made a conscious decision when I wrote the Virgin Diet and the Sugar Impact Diet to be diet agnostic, meaning I was going to write this whether you were vegan or you are paleo, or like Dr. Mark Hyman talks about, being pegan, which is to me the best of both worlds. And so here's a couple things I want you to think about. I don't think anyone would disagree that one of the key things that we want to make sure is that we're eating more plants. I like people to get 5 to 10 servings of non-starchy plants a day. And when I say that, I really mean vegetables. 1 or 2 servings max of fruit. Don't go crazy there because of the fructose. And when you can do the darker berries, it's better. But for plants, loads of deep green leafies, broccoli sprouts, cauliflower. We pretty much rotate every night between broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and cauliflower every night. And I always get some deep green leafies at lunch. So make sure that you're getting a lot of those in. Here's where things can get a little bit dicey. And this is what I want to talk to you about, is when you're looking at animal products, this is where you have to be so careful about what you're choosing, because, and I want you to hear this, you are what you ate. Meaning that if you're eating a factory processed cow, it is entirely different than eating a grass-fed and finished pasture cow. So we've got to be very careful that if we are choosing animal protein, that we aren't going and eating bad animal protein, just like you don't want to eat genetically modified plants either, or damaged oils, right? Quality is key in all of these different foods. And there's a couple other things we want to make sure. I'm going to give you some basic principles. I kind of am getting on a rant. All right, here we go. basic principles that are important. Number one, eat seasonal and local, organic, and rotate. So that means go, and this what's super cool now is at the grocery stores, you can generally get local farmers, but you want to eat local, in-season foods, and you want to eat from the rainbow as much as possible. You want to eat 5 to 10 servings of non-starchy vegetables a day. And how much you eat of the, what I call the starchy or the medium sugar impact carbs, things like wild rice, potatoes, some of the squashes, most of the squashes are low, but how much you eat of those types of things, beans, legumes, really depends on where you fall in the sugar impact diet. That's why people go through our breakthrough carb intolerance program and find where they do best. I find with most people with any kind of adrenal issues or thyroid issues or going through menopause, they do better with a moderate amount of slow, low carbs at lunch, say a half a cup, and then again at dinner will help with sleep. So depending on where you are, you can have more or less of those slow, low carbs, and then a moderate amount of clean, lean protein, optimal protein, wild fish, grass-fed beef, but avoiding those factory antibiotics. Those ones, you are what you eat. And when you are feeding GMO corn and soy, you're changing the fat profile. When you're hitting them up with antibiotics and hormones, you're changing everything. So do not do that. All right. And more of fibery foods, more of plant-based foods. Those should really make the mainstay of your diet. And I think most of us out there in the nutrition field would actually agree on all of that, which is super cool. All right. If you've not left a review yet, what the heck are you waiting for? I'd love to be able to shout you out on the next show. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe and share it with your pals. All right. We want this information out far and wide so people can take action and take personal responsibility for their health, and we can help 1 billion people get healthy. A lofty goal, but totally doable with your help. See ya.
That's all for this episode of the JJ Virgin Lifestyle Show, which marks another step towards a healthier body and mind. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and we'll talk to you next week.